This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so when I start my coil, let me get rid of these. I like to have a pair of tweezers like this because that helps me to hang on to my coil and keep it tight, because you really want to make sure that you have that really snug when you start it off, so you don't have any little extra spaces in at the end. Let me find the end that's not so ratty on this. And what I do is I grab the end of the clothesline, and then I just wrap it around there like that. And once I get it started, I keep wrapping, and then I put it down flat, and it wants to undo itself. So back to the tweezers to kind of get it tight. Sorry, I had a pin in my mouth. And then take some long pins and just go in sideways to hold it together, so you can start sewing. And sometimes, all right, okay. So now I've got my little snail, if you will, and I'm going to use just a straight stitch, and I'm going to leave it, and I'm not, well, to start off with, let me go step back 1 second here. When you start your coil, you can start with your zigzag stitch, which is what you use to put it together, or you can do like a little, what I'm going to call, I got to get some light here, a little spider stitch, where you just do straight stitches in like a double X pattern to secure that, because sometimes it's a little difficult to get started with your zigzag stitch. So if you just do that, some straight stitches back and forth to hold it, that's perfectly fine. And it's a little bit easier than trying to do the zigzag right off the bat. So also, as far as the needle in your machine, you want to use something that's a little bit heavier than the normal needle. You don't, like the 80 needle, which is the normal sewing needle. You want to use something like a 90 embroidery needle or a 90 or 100 top stitch needle. They're a little more sturdier, and because you're going through something that's thick, you will have less skipped stitches if you're using a bigger needle that's going to make a bigger hole for it, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do some straight stitching across this, and I'm using a open toe foot. Sandy, if you have the sewing star foot for your machine. Pardon? I can't hear you.
It's my favorite of all feet.
I love it.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
Yeah, well, it's perfect, and unfortunately, Viking doesn't have anything quite like this, because this little finger that comes out is directly in line with your needle. And as you're sewing these coils, you can line that up between the two rows of the clothesline to keep your zigzag stitch centered. So right now I'm just using an open toe, the regular open toe foot on the Viking, and I'm using just regular cotton sewing thread. I mean, you're welcome to use any kind of thread that you want, but like embroidery thread, because when I did this one, I used a variegated embroidery thread, top and bottom.
I like that one. That's pretty.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a minute. All right. When you put your initial coil under the machine, you want the loose end to your right side, because with the newer machines, it's not as much of a problem. But if it's over here, as it grows, it's going to come this way. It's going to go into the machine. If you have it so the loose end is on your right side, then as it grows, it's going to the left of your machine. And say, like one of the ladies Friday was making a beach bag, and she was making it in an oval shape. So in order to make a good sized bottom to the bag, if she'd had it growing to the inside of the machine, potentially could have caused problems. So, and sometimes I find myself having to cut the threads and flip it over because I started the wrong way. So if you can get your mind to work a little better than mine and have it on the right side, then you're good to go. So I'm just going to sew really slowly. I don't know where my speed is with my presser foot, and don't be crabbing at me. And being mindful of where my pins are, and obviously I wasn't there, and I broke the needle. So have a supply of needles, because it's, even if you don't break one, come on, stop. You think I don't know how to use this machine.
While you're doing that, should we do the IDT or not
you can do the IDT, yes. Yes,
okay.
you can.
Okay. I didn't know if it mattered. Okay.
Or IDF on the Viking.
Oh, okay.
We had to have two different names. Okay, so now this is a good time to tell you that, okay, so I have some thread tails, and it really doesn't matter, just, clip them off. And if you're working around your coil, just back up a little bit. And, if you've come to here, whoopsie, if you've come to here and your thread breaks or something happens, when you start over, just back up about 1/2 of an inch, and then you can just trim your tails off, or, tie them or whatever. But it really, or just go back and forth with your reverse button for a couple stitches to get it back in business. Okay, that's much better. Dang you. Okay. One more time. And I'm just gonna, what in the world? I do not know. There were no pins in there. Unfortunately, I hit the start stop button rather than using the foot pedal. So oops, good. Well, I have lots of strings and need more needles. Here's a top stitch. I may have been pulling on it. You just need to be very careful that you don't pull on that where it would flex the needle and bend it and break it. Let's get started again. All right. Some days are that way. Okay. All right. What is the matter? Ooh. Okay.
It's sort of like when your grandson, you say, oh, my grandson can wave bye-bye, but in front of anybody, he doesn't, right?
Yeah. It's like taking your car to the mechanic
That's
or your,
right.
or your kid to the doctor. Oh, they're just fine. You know, they're happy playing, carrying on. Ugh. Okay. So I'm gonna carefully I don't know whether there's something in that clothesline or what. Okay. So I'm going to stop with the straight stitching and I'm going to switch to a zigzag. And on the Epic, I'm going to use number 9. On the icon, I believe it's number 6. It's just a straight zigzag. However, I'm going to change the width to like 5.5, and I'm also going to change the length to the same number. And the intent is that it zigs in the middle of one row of clothesline, like it zigs into right here and it zags into the middle of the one next to it. So that the middle, the gully between the clothesline rows is right in the middle. Does that make sense for you, Sandy? It would be right at your finger on your foot.
Yes, thanks. Yes. What width do you think sounds good? Was it 4 or 5 or what?
5.5 for the width and the length is what I'm starting with. You can always adjust it, especially if your cord is smaller or larger. You know, you basically you want to go from the middle of one line of clothesline to the middle of the adjacent one.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so if it goes here on one, I don't know that you can even, come on. Can you see where my needle is? It's kind of in the middle of that inside coil. And then when I come across it, it's going to hit in the middle of the outside coil.
Yes, I see it. Okay.
Okay. Yep. And Brenda, you're taking notes because you can't play, right?
Yep. Yep. Got it.
Okay. Okay.
Judy, would that depend on what size your clothesline is?
Yes, it would, Carol.
Okay.
And normal clothesline, I say normal, is 3/16, and it should say so on the package.
It does. The only one that I could find was 7/32.
7/32. So that's
So it's a
just
half a centimeter.
1/32 bigger than 3/16. I don't think that's going to make a whole lot difference, but you know, feel free to adjust it so you like the look of it. All right.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I'm just going to go really slow. And as I go, I'm just turning my coil and keeping that loose end snug against it. Okay. And just let the machine feed it. Don't worry about it. With my open toe foot, there's that little red mark that shows me the center of it. So I'm trying to keep that little red mark in what I call the gully between the two layers or two rows of clothesline. Okay. So let me stop right here and tell you about wrapping as we go. If you had wanted to do the whole thing wrapped, then find the other end of this thing and trim it off a bit. Okay. If you had wanted to wrap the whole thing, and you're going to cut your fabric strips into 3-inch width pieces, and then you don't want them any longer than like 21 inches. 18 to 21 inches is what's recommended, because when you're wrapping, you know, you got this end that you got to deal with. And if it's much longer,
that should be?
I'm sorry, Brenda?
How wide the strip?
The strip's 3/4 of an inch wide.
Oh, okay. I thought I
And-
heard 3 inches and I'm like, that doesn't look like it.
And then, no, 18 to 21 inches long. So a fat quarter is perfect for cutting strips. Okay. And this colorful one that I did, this little guy that Sandy likes, is from a fat quarter. It looks like this. I mean, it's got
Ooh, that's
all
neat.
sorts of stuff in it.
I like that.
Did you cut it on the bias?
Yes, slightly. You do not have to do a 45 bias. I mean, you can just, the reason that you cut it on the bias is not because it wraps any different or anything. It's because it helps reduce the fraying. If you cut it on grain, then you're going to get way more fraying. And this piece that I've gotten here has been has been messed around with, as you know, for demonstration and so forth. But and it's a little bit more frayed, and that's another reason for not making them really long, is to you're not handling it as much and causing the fraying. Okay.
Can I see the piece that you've wrapped and sewn again, please?
Sure. This guy?
Well, I was trying to think, because of the edges never really getting sealed, they're seeable and.
Yes. But, you know, they're not really that obvious. On the edge, they could be, but we'll talk about that in a minute, which I didn't do on this one. I don't know why. There are edges in here, like, can you see there's one right here?
Yeah.
And if that really bothers you, then you could take something like this fray block,
Mm-hmm.
drop a piece, you know, a little drop of it on any place where it was loose. But normally nothing is done with that. And in fact, sometimes it adds a little bit of rustic charm to your piece if you've got some of the fraying there.
So would that be washable?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh yes. And one of the ladies in class said, you know, I've made tons and tons of these for myself and for my as gifts for friends, but I couldn't bring anything I had because they're all grummy. And I said, well, do you wash them? She says, oh no, I just make myself a new one. So if you're going to wrap the whole thing, or if you want the center of it wrapped, you need some kind of glue. My preference is this Roxanne glue basted because it has a fast grab. Sometimes like that Fray block is very liquid and it does not dry real quick or grab real quick. It does a great job as far as, you know, if you're doing thread ends or something like that, or raw edges. But this is almost an immediate grab and it's washable. I shouldn't say it's washable. It washes out. It's a water-based glue. Okay, you can also use a glue stick. All right. So to start off with, and is the lighting okay if I do it here? Can you see this okay? Or would it be better if I moved someplace else where I've got more light?
It's okay with me, but
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay with me.
Okay. So this bottle actually has a small applicator and a larger one, and I keep knocking the lid off of the larger one, so I've taped it on. But what you want to do is to start off by putting some glue on your fabric strip, and not a lot, just a little dab will do you. Remember that? But you want to cover the end. So when you make your coil, that you've got kind of a flap of fabric to tuck in the center of your coil. See, I've got it wrapped around there just a little bit, but hanging off the edge. And then you start wrapping at an angle, and you really want your wraps to overlap, probably about 1/4 of an inch as you go. And you just, you know, keep wrapping. And if this were the beginning of it, then when you start your coil, you would just wrap around. Does that make sense? And I didn't wrap quite far enough if I was going to do my coil. So let me put a couple more on there. And you can see as I wrap that if I had a really, really long piece, that would be a royal pain. And you don't need to glue it as you go. If it makes you more comfortable, every so often you can put a spot of glue, but it stays because you're going to sew it down and it's not going to go anywhere. So once you have a sufficient amount wrapped, you can have your little coil and start sewing it together. You may need to tuck that fabric in and put some other, you know, something like the Fray Stop glue on it to just contain your fabric. But then as you sew, you're going to just, you know, do 2 or 3 wraps ahead and then sew, and then a couple, 3 wraps and sew. And then when you get to the end of your piece of fabric and you're just going to take glue and a second piece of fabric and glue the second one on and just keep wrapping. Or if you are doing the intermittent wrapping, like I'm going to do here in a minute, then you can just, you're going to glue your beginning end and then you're going to glue your ending end. And then continue on with the naked clothesline. And every so often, one of the ladies had come with some of her clothesline wrapped with fabric in intermittent places, and she was disappointed because it seemed like all of the pieces of fabric were ending up right next to each other as she progressed through her item. So
Who would have thought?
I know, and the Murphys at work all the time. And so she said, I think it works better if you just do it as you sew, then you can be more sure about the placement of them. So if you were wanting to add some little color in my little basic clothesline here, I would just put some, I could put glue on the clothesline itself, and then tuck my fabric under it. You know, make sure that the end is securely wrapped, and then just, in this case, I probably would, it depends on how much of a pop of color I wanted. Maybe in the middle, I would want to just use a shorter piece of fabric because it's going to cover more of a round. And so maybe I just want to cut this off because still a very small circle with my clothesline. So I'll just cut this off and secure the fabric with some glue, and then continue sewing. And I like when I stop and maneuver my clothesline or futz with some wrapping, I like to stop with my needle in the coil that is sewn together rather than the piece that I'm attaching. It just, if it's in the one that's being attached, it can sometimes cause your thread to get a little loose. So just, if you can, yes, machine has decided not to stitch. What are you doing? Excuse me while I restart my machine here. Okay. Sorry about that. Machine's having a bad day. It's fine. I'm sure it's operator error. It's been neglected here recently. I've been working on that block of the month, FOF block of the month quilt. Okay.
Oh,
All right. So I think we're down the speed. Needle down. You want to sew with needle down. Okay. So now we're back in business. What is the deal? Now you can really see the stitches because I'm still using that neutral colored yarn, but on that colorful fabric it shows up. So now I just have my little pop of color there close to the center. And then when the mood strikes me, I can put in another piece and maybe I would make it longer, or I could make it shorter. You know, I don't have to use the whole piece. It just, whatever suited my fancy at the moment. But you can see if I had pre-wrapped it, that maybe I would be like Lori had on Friday. She was experienced the fact that all of her colorful pieces were stacking up in one area of her project. So, you know, if I were to put one in now, then it would be almost opposite of where I had put my original one. Okay. And if I wanted to make this into a bowl, all right. What is the matter with these people? Okay, if I wanted to make this into a bowl, it's staying flat because I'm stitching and the coils are laying next to each other. If I wanted to make it into a bowl, I would hold it. I would hold it like that, up again, almost up against my machine. And then instead of the coils being side by side, it would be more on top of the previous row. And that's how it would stitch it, if that makes sense. So if I start stitching carefully like that, and I'm holding my flat part up close to my machine, as I stitch, then it's putting the next row more on the top of the previous one than on the side of it. And you can see how it's already cupping to make a little bowl shape. So then as you're going, now the coils are basically side by side like they were. You're stitching the ends from the inside of your shape. But there's, because you've made that first row where you kind of changed the direction or the orientation of where your coils were, the sides are going up. And until you are satisfied with the size of your object, you're going to continue to hold it up, like I'm holding this up to get those, you know. And now if you wanted the top to start to flare, then if you tipped it down like that, it would bring those coils back to the outside more rather than to the inside. Does that make, Brenda's making a face. Does that make sense?
Picturing it.
You're picturing it? Okay, but see, I mean, it's very easy to get it to make a bowl shape. And the difference that when you started it, if you, instead of making a tight circular coil, if you just did a straight piece and then turned it and sewed it that way and then started going around it, you would make an oval base. Okay. And, you know, so that would change the shape of your piece to be oval rather than round. So basically, and when Judy Evans brought the heart-shaped piece, she had made, I believe, like a long oval up and sewn a couple rows, and then she started bending it so that it would be tighter in the dip of the heart, and then when there would be more down here on the opposite of that for the point of the heart, and that would cause it to take that shape. Does that make sense? So you can, you can shape it all sorts of ways, however you want. I just made some basic coils one time, and I made myself a little snowman with just 3 different size flat circles, and then I did goof around with the shape to make him a hat. And these are just overlapped and stitched together.
Did you embroider the carrot? You know,
No,
could we? Okay.
you could embroider on it. I haven't done that yet, and I'd be very careful after
Yeah.
breaking a couple needles today. But know that
Yeah.
carrot is made out of Sculpey clay,
Oh, it's really
as
cute.
is his heart.
Hmm.
So, and right at this moment, I don't know where he is. I tried to find him at Christmas and I couldn't find him. So
It's darling, darling.
he's about 16 or 18 inches tall,
Woo!
and he makes a cute wall decoration for Christmas or winter, period. He doesn't have to be Christmas. He can be winter. So, are you ready to try? I know Brenda
Yeah,
can't, but Sandy and Carol, maybe?
I'm ready. Yep.
All right.
I'm
Go slow.
already working on it.
Okay, good. I'm gonna put some more color in mine here.
I'll say goodbye then, unless you have any more hints.
Let's see. Well, in the handout, I did give you some words to use to search in Google on to find, like YouTube's or Pinterest has tons of stuff. One of the ladies in class was showing me something. She was on Pinterest in class, and somebody had made a fairly good sized bowl and then braided the clothesline and put that braid of clothesline as a finishing edge. Oh, that's what I did not tell you about finishing. All right. When you finish, you would like not to have just a chopped off edge. Just the square end of the clothesline there and a step off. If this, if this were the finish, you don't want it to look like that. You don't just want a jump off place. What you want to do is take some fairly sturdy scissors, and it can help if you glue a couple inches of your clothesline first, just to give it some body, because once you cut it the way the clothesline is made, this stuff all wants to ravel off because it's a woven thing. So if you can kind of glue the first or the last couple inches that you're going to stitch down, and then cut that at a very slight angle, so that when you lay it down, it gives you a gradual close to it. And you'll want to, you'll be zigzagging along, and you want, which way am I going? This way. You'll be zigzagging along, and when you come to it, just keep sewing and then continue with your zigzag all the way around the outside. That's just going to reinforce that edge for you. And I did not do it on my colorful one, and I don't know why I didn't, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it because first off, it'll then look more the same. You know, it'll have the threads on the outside, and it will nail down some of those raw edges that you've got from wrapping if you've wrapped it. All right.
Okay. Do you change the size of your stitch?
No, I
No?
just keep going, and then it will pretty much overlap the other stitch, and that's okay.
Okay.
In that book that I showed you, it showed some of the things they had put a fabric, like they had done something very plain, and then they had put a fabric binding around it just to make a colorful edge or a prettier edge. And then even if you had wrapped it and you put a binding around it, that would cover your raw edges and maybe not wear as much or fray as much because you would have covered them. And definitely if you're going to do some kind of a binding, you want it on a bias. Anything else that I can help with?
Thank you so much, Ruth.
You can find me if you have questions when you get to a place where you can play.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
thank you for
Thanks so
being
much.
here and taking time out from your visit with your family.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
I'll
Bye.
see you in workbook class.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good day, Brenda.
Bye all.
Enjoy your family.
Bye.
Okay, ladies, keep on sewing. I'm going to put some more color in my little bowl here. I don't have no idea what I'm going to do with it, but it'll be handy. They make great little gifts. One of the ladies at the shop got enchanted with them, and she made kind of small ones and then used them as gift baskets for loaves of bread that she was making as to give to her friends. So that was a good idea. Little ones make great trinket catchers, ring holders or whatever on a dresser. They collecting pins and stuff as you sew is a good use for them. And they're just handy little dishes almost to put things in. Of course, you can't put any food in them, but they're fun to make.
Judy, on your Epic, did you use just the regular open toe foot or the IDF?
I'm using the IDF one, Carol.
Okay.
I think that helps feed it. If you're doing the intermittent wrapping, it does help to kind of plan ahead and not try to do your wrapping right up next to the needle. Leave yourself, some room so you can comfortably wrap and get your pieces on there. I don't know which way I wrapped. And if you kind of miss in one place and your zig and zag aren't going fairly evenly into the different rounds, you can always do your reverse button and back up and just catch up, catch the pieces that were kind of missed and come forward again. It doesn't matter. Is it going okay?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
Oh, shoot. There goes that needle.
Oh, sorry, Sandy. Or was that Carol?
That's Carol.
That's Carol. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to flex the needle, you know, if you just slightly pull on it when you shouldn't, and you saw it certainly happens to me too. So
Yeah. That was weird because it was while I was hand wheeling it.
oh no.
Yeah, then it just took off. Whew.
Just I kind of like to make, if I break a needle, I like to make sure I can find all the pieces,
Right.
which means you may have to take out the bobbin and look down in the bobbin case too. Ah. Hmm. Okay, ladies, I'm about to at the end of my rope here.
Very funny.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah, I figured as much.
Okay, and I've put glue, and it's, ideally I would let it dry, but I don't normally. I've put some of that glue-basted glue on here and kind of tried to work it into the clothesline.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut it at an angle. And you need some fairly sturdy scissors to do this. Okay, see, this is what I've cut it at a pretty slight angle here. So it kind of goes down to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And get my little bowl to cooperate. And I want the side with still the outside of the clothesline, I want that to end up on top here. I don't want this ugly stuff to be on the top. So I'm going to just keep on sewing. And as I get closer there, I can put a little bit of glue in here and kind of paste that down. So because if I don't do something like that, then it'll want to swing out on me and not get caught as well. So, and as I go, I eventually am going to be off of, see, it wants to sneak out there. And then I'm just going to zigzag around the whole edge. And when I get back to where I've ended, I may do some reverse stitching just to make sure that I have that end securely covered. But I like to do this extra row of stitching around the top just to secure that edge. So now when I get back here, I'm going to go, and then I'm going to just back up a little bit to put some more extra stitches over that end that I chopped off. And then you can end it however you want with just a few reverse stitches and just close it off, or you can leave the tails and then bring them together and tie them and take a hand sewing needle and bury them in the bowl or your object somewhere, right? So that looks like
I like that. It looks like a one of the hats that they wear on the islands when they're going through the rice fields. I like that.
I was thinking that I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to how much clothesline I had, that I would like to have, instead of just continuing to go up in a kind of a cone shape, to make more of a flat rim around it.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because, you know, you'd be going like this with it cropped up, and then you would just flatten it out more so that they started going next to each other rather than on top of each other.
Oh, yeah.
And it's something to play with. And this is another idea where you can just kind of bring your clothesline out and then back in, and you make kind of little handles.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. I'm gonna do that, I think.
So, and you know, if when you get to the end, you don't have to do that paper kind of thing that I did. This one, I took the end of it and just made a little coil.
Mm.
And
Good
you
idea.
can zigzag it and then stitch it down later.
Mm-hmm.
You can do all sorts of stuff on them. But this has a little bit of yarn and a charm on it. You can put beads on them. Whatever suits your fancy.
This is very nice. Thanks. Let me take mine off and I'll show you what I've done so far. Hold on.
Okay, I'd love to see it if you don't mind interrupting it.
It's really plain.
That's all right.
I just did
Oh, that's nice.
and that,
Uh-huh.
and that's just all I've done. And I may put some pieces of fabric on the side, but probably not because it's anyway. And I think maybe doing a little like you did, something like that. Whoops, something like that maybe. I'm not sure.
Uh-huh.
But I like the idea of putting scraps or your things by your sewing machine, you know? I like
Yeah,
that.
it's
Thanks.
and in the book here, I want to show you something. Let's see. If you're making something large, you have the potential for not having enough clothesline in one hank of clothesline. So you would need to join another piece.
Okay.
And somebody took that page out of my book when I wasn't looking. Hang on, I'll find it. It's insane. It's got to be in this front part here.
Well, I was going to ask Carol. Aren't you Carol the one that hikes or bikes or something?
She goes hiking.
Hiking.
I
I was
go
going to ask
hiking.
you. I was going to ask you if you've been hiking lately.
Yes, the last trip I made to Colorado, I did 2 hikes, one on a Saturday and one on a Sunday.
Wow, golly.
It was a lot of fun with my hiking group.
Oh man, huh?
Okay.
Missed my
This
friends.
is the picture that they show. I'm sorry to interrupt. This is the picture that they show in the book for joining 2 pieces, where I would just put some glue on both ends, and then they butted them up together and wrapped with thread, or you could even use a piece of fabric to wrap them together, and then I'd let them dry so they were fairly sturdy. And that would, you know, that certainly would be less visible if you were doing wrapping when you had to join some. Okay.
Good idea.
Okay, Miss Carol, how goes it?
I just found my needles. It's very exciting.
Okay. But is it going otherwise okay?
Yeah, it's going fine. I think I might have even hit the the pin that I put in the little coil when I was trying to sew across.
Ah, I've heard
I
that
think
happen.
that's how it might. Yeah, I might have broken it that way. Yeah, so I'm good. I haven't anything to show yet, but I'm working at it.
Okay, as long as you're comfortable with what you're doing,
I am.
go ahead.
I
Carol?
may need to leave the class early. So
Well,
I-
we're on your schedule because I've told you, I think most everything I know about it. It's just,
Yeah.
they're fun
yeah,
and they're quick. And you
I
can,
saw something I did see on YouTube where they embroidered on the bottom, but I'm not certain how you could, how you keep it in the hoop. This is before you finish the sides or something, but I don't know.
you'd have to do it while it was flat.
Yeah,
You could use like that sticky stabilizer.
you'd have to, I think. Yeah, maybe
Or
yeah.
you could, you can do the base stitch too.
Interesting. Well, that's for another time.
Yeah, and I've if you put the embroidery so that the pretty side is on the inside,
Right.
then the bobbin side is going to be on the outside, and I would think that definitely you would want to match your thread,
Right. Right.
top and bottom, when you did that,
Right.
because otherwise it's not going to be very pretty. Or you could put a circle of fabric
Right.
on the bottom.
That's a thought too. That's a thought. Well, this is fun.
There's all sorts of possibilities.
Yes. You do a good class. Thank you very much, Judy.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. You made a fairly good sized bowl.
Well, bigger than I thought I was going to do. It just grew.
I know it does, and in a hurry.
It does.
These bowls, these plain bowls that I made that I'm going to do the little
Yeah.
tote bags out of,
Yeah.
the bottom measures 5 inches, and it doesn't take very long to get there. So, I don't know.
I did shorten my stitch width because my rope is more narrow, and that worked better. Just shorten it a little bit. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Whatever fits the rope.
yeah, sometimes it's really difficult. I had some that I've had for a couple years, and I've been using that, but
Boy, I like
I
that white
ordered some
bowl.
from Amazon recently, and it's the same brand as what I had from years ago,
Yeah.
but it feels much different. It's much softer. And so it doesn't make, like, this is pretty sturdy. And let me get back to okay, this is the one I made out of some from Amazon, and it's pretty
Yeah.
flexible, whereas this is one that I've made of the clothesline that I've had. So
The old stuff that we used to use on the line. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
It's fun. And you can, you can use all sorts of cords. You don't have to stick with clothesline. You can use that parachute cord or macrame cord or this stuff I got. I don't even know what they call it. It's called diamond braid poly all-purpose cord.
Gee.
But it definitely is a smaller diameter than the, well, it says 5/32.
You wouldn't have to cover that either. You could have all different color bowls.
Yeah, or you
So
could.
Judy, it doesn't have to be 100% cotton?
This is not cotton. This is poly.
Oh, okay.
The reason that, well, when Karen Charles was here, and she had many things that she had made. She had been dyeing hers,
Mm.
and I believe she used RIT dye.
Uh-huh.
And, you could use fabric paints on them. You could dye them. Do some yarn embellishment on them.
So why were the directions that it had to be cotton? I'm just curious.
That was in for if you wanted to dye them or paint them.
Oh, if you wanted to dye them, I see. Okay,
Because polyester will not take dye.
right, okay.
So, and you could dye your cord ahead of time and make it, kind of, if you wanted part of it to be light and part of it to be dark, you could get fancy with how you dyed your cord
Mhm.
and then made your whatever with it. So.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Judy.
It really doesn't have to be 100% cotton. The cotton requirement was just in case somebody made it and then said, oh darn, I really wanted to dye it. Or, do something
Okay.
else fancy. Okay?
Thanks. I'll see
Have
somebody
fun.
Friday. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, Sandy.
Bye,
Bye,
Carol.
Sandy. Have a good
Bye.
day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, Miss Carol, I sent you that. Let me stop this.